what was your first reaction when you found out where you were being stationed? That's a good question.
Oh, we've got to read that.
In the end, I should. In the end, what were your overall feelings of being there?
Oh, okay. We've got to read that one about Welcome to Old New. Maybe we'll come back to that. It's a very short chapter, but it covers it.
We took off from San Francisco on this troop transport. It's a large ship, and as we came to the equator, we those who had not been across the equator before, they were put through all kinds of buckets of water and things like that. Those who had been over it before, of course, they got through scot-free. So then we were on the ship until finally, 17 days later, across the ocean, we saw a white lighthouse.
Yeah. Now, I want to turn the world map around
Very,
here.
very short amount.
Yeah, but I was thinking last night how you came, and you were leaving San Francisco here and going all this way around over here to New Caledonia. 17 days of open ocean with a Japanese sub attack on the way. Fortunately, they got the sub before the sub got them.
Okay, that's one of the stories.
That's one of the stories that's in the book. And then they finally, out of the blue, and they had no idea where they were going because there was a saying, loose lips sink ships. So they didn't tell anybody. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, up pops this beautiful lighthouse on a little island that's off the shore here. And that was their first inkling. And somebody aboard said, "Welcome to New Caledonia." Where's New Caledonia? It's about 850 miles east of Brisbane, Australia. That's, oh, okay.
So anyhow, what happened is they dropped us off in the bay, and we got into a whaleboat, and they took us over to a place called Triangle Gardens, which was a park in the middle of Noumea that the Americans took over as a receiving base, so they would have a place for people to be as a point where they would be taken away to different spots to work or be brought up. When I was on the Inter-Island League baseball team, I was third baseman. And so one day as I was going out to the field, I looked at the board trying to find out when I was going or where I was going, and had no idea. And there was my name. It said the next day at 1:30 I'm to be at the bench there, and they would pick me up and take me away. And so we got aboard it was kind of a rainy day, a little bit of mist in the air, a breeze blowing, and
That's
there's a
the
ship
picture
called
here.
the Captain's Gig, which I took a picture of. And that had some shelter over it, otherwise all the other boats, they didn't have any shelter. And instead of going to a ship, we were taken across the bay to this island. It wasn't a very favorable appearance when we arrived there. Broken down dock, high grass, nothing really. On the top of the hill was a old French garrison that had been a Japanese prisoner of war unit, but they had been moved out for us. And then we drove over the top of that hill down to the side of the hill where we could look out over the Coral Sea. In other words, on one side is the bay, on the other side is the sea, the Coral Sea. A beautiful spot. And there was a bunch of guys there, about 16, I think, or something like that. And they were all just standing around. They had a fire going, and they said, "This is it." And welcome to Il-Nu. That was where our new base was to be built. We were the forerunners, and we pitched our tents in a lot of high grass. We had to cut out a spot to make things level. And that little animal that you see here, that was a kind of surprise.
Yes.
See that little green thing there?
Yeah, that's about a life-size drawing of it. And after an evening around the campfire, he made his way in inside it. They'd given a framework to put over his cot with mosquito netting on it. But this somehow had crawled up out of the grass and was waiting to greet him. And he didn't even know praying mantises existed. And there this was right in his face. I asked him to pose for me. I got a whole book out of the library on praying mantises and then very carefully made this drawing. I said, what position was it in? So he showed me, and there it was right at his face. And he let out a yelp, and everybody else got a good laugh out of it, but Dolph didn't think it was funny, so he checked out his sleeping bag very carefully. Yeah. Welcome to Il-Nu. And also I want to mention that before the Japanese prisoners were housed there, this particular island had been used to house French political prisoners. One little tiny difference between the French system of government and ours was that if you disagreed too much with the government, they would deport you to someplace far, far away from the mother country, and they just put you there. And they were called political deportees. And yes, so they were on this gosh awful place. He later got dengue fever, which is sort of like malaria, except you get over it. But outside of that, you're just as sick and miserable, and you can die from it. And there's a wonderful story in there about the attack of the mosquitoes and gnats that inhabited the tall grass. It was not a nice place to be.
Okay, here's a good question. What was the most difficult assignment you had to undertake while in the Navy?
Oh, that's got to be the propeller, wasn't it? Now, I'll be quiet. I like to talk.
Pivots. There was a large troop ship that ran aground on the coral reef. It had a 9-foot propeller. Now that's about the distance from about here to there. And the troops it was loaded with troops. The ship could not move because it was all chewed up. The propeller was chewed up. You cannot have a propeller that's off kilter in any way, because what it'll do is chew up what they call the stuffing box, or the unit that goes around the shaking of it will create leaks and so forth. So anyhow, this fellow asked me if I could possibly fix this propeller, and I said I was what they call a coppersmith. Going to school, I had learned a lot and absorbed it and enjoyed it. And I knew nothing about it before. I was a carpenter, journeyman. But in this particular case, I knew I could do it. And so we built a framework of bricks about 2 feet high. And then we built a big fire underneath there for about 2 weeks. And we heated up a big steel plate that was on top of it. And then we put the propeller on top of the plate so that the propeller would get heated also. Now, I don't know whether you know anything about electrolysis or any of the things that occur, but if you do not have, when you're doing bronze work or brass work, you have to have equal heat on the side that you're doing, which is puddling the materials, and the thing that you're joining onto, which is the solid part that you're putting together. And if you do not, there is a weak spot between the two. But if you preheat the large part, or the part that you have already, and then you join it, it will hold. And so we had several weeks of asbestos suits. It was rather hot there, and the helmets, and just day in, day out, even night and day, because the ship was waiting out on the ocean. And so we did a beautiful job. I just say that it turned out perfect. We had the machine shop make up special roller bearings, and we made a rack so it would stand up, and you could just take the propeller and just push it down, and it would just spin around. It wouldn't stop any particular place. If it would stop somewhere, we'd have to grind it down or add to it, depending on. So when we got finished, the captain came down, and there was various celebrities, and it was a big deal. Anyhow, the guys worked hard, and we did a good job. But so the captain said, "We would like to reward you because you have you have really done a good job here." And so I said, "Well, I think the guys would like to have a little time ashore because we hadn't had anything for many, many months." And so we had a trip, a fishing trip, into the wilds of New Caledonia. And it's a chapter that's very interesting, but I won't go into it because it takes too much time. But I will say one little part. We had a friend, I had a very good friend, his name was Sam. He came from Newport Beach. And he led a sort of a protected life, I think. And so I said, Sam, another friend of mine, his name was Gordon. Anyhow, what are you bringing that piece of meat and that hook for, and that piece of rope? He says, "I'm going to catch me a big fish." I said, "You're going to do what?" And of course, eyes rolled, and we couldn't believe it. So he took it and whirled it around his head and threw it across the little stream that we were by. It was a deep flowing stream, by the way. And in the morning, Gordo and we got up early, and we were going to go fishing. So we walked down by the river, and instead of the line being, what it was C-cord line, which is a nylon